Hello everyone, it's Alicia. I am chilling with a pint of Guinness. Cheers! And today in this video we are going to be talking about pagan music. Do we use it in our practice? Do we enjoy listening to pagan music? This was a question posed to the Pagan Perspective YouTube channel a couple weeks ago, and so tonight I'm finally going to be answering it. Guinness is delicious. And if you're watching this and you are of the legal drinking age of your country, please feel free to grab a grown-up beverage of your choice and join me as I discuss this video. Or if you're not of the legal drinking age in your country, grab soda or a cup of tea or hot chocolate, whatever it is you like to drink, and yeah, let's have a chat. A chat and a drink. So, pagan music, do we listen to it, enjoy it, use it in our practice? And the short answer is yes, absolutely to all those questions. I use it in my practice, I enjoy listening to it, and actually pagan music is what got me into realizing I was pagan in the first place, and it opened me up to learning about that modern paganism was even a thing, because up until then I didn't know that modern paganism was a thing. I just thought that it had died out with the Christian conquest of the world, basically. So yeah, it was through the arts, through pagan music, that I realized modern paganism was a thing, and that's how I started my journey. And like many of you, I'm sure one of the very first pagan-inspired artists who I discovered was the great Loreena McKennitt. Her music draws heavily on a lot of mysticism from various religions, but included in that are a lot of pagan themes, pagan elements, and I first encountered her music through the mini-series The Mists of Avalon. Her song, The Mystic Stream, is featured heavily in that series, and the show itself is fantastic, and the song is amazing. And when I first heard it, it's played in the opening scene that has a lake with mist, and all of a sudden, out of the mist comes the barge of Avalon, and on that barge is Morgan Le Fay, and just the combination of the visuals and the atmosphere of the scene and that song, it just reached out and grabbed onto my soul and just hasn't let go ever since. I was so moved by that, I had to look up the show when I got home, and so I went online, and this was around 2007, 2006, so the internet and message boards were still very much in their infancy back then, but I went on IMDb and looked it up, and on that message board was one of the threads on there talked about, hey, what's your pagan path? Who are your matron and patron deities? And I honestly, when I read that, I thought it was fan fiction. I thought people were just creating personas for themselves and acting like they were in the world of the Mists of Avalon and writing fan fiction based on that. But through reading that thread and others like it, that's how I found out, oh, modern paganism is a thing, and that's how I discovered Wicca, and the rest is history. That's what started me on my pagan path, is discovering that song, that mini-series, and finding the people who not only enjoyed the show in and of itself, but also enjoyed it because they were pagans as well. And that mini-series, it portrays pagans in a positive light. And what I love about it so much is the show displays that both pagan and Christians in the world of the story have their extremes, because the story of the Mists of Avalon, for those of you who don't know, It's a retelling of the Arthurian legends that paints Morgan Le Fay, who is normally seen as just a straight up villain. It portrays her as a priestess of the old religion and trying to save her Celtic native religion from the encroachment of Christianity and the type of Christianity that tries to wipe out all other religions except itself. And it shows that there are Christians who are tolerant of the old religion, and those who see it as devil worship even though it's not, and just try to wipe it out. So it's a great show because it displays the nuance of the two religions going back and forth and trying to either compromise or duke each other out. So it's a great miniseries. I definitely recommend it, and the book as well. If you haven't read the book The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley, highly recommended. Gonna set my beer down because I'm getting kind of tired holding it. But yes, Loreena McKennitt was one of the first pagan-inspired artists I discovered, and since then I've loved her music ever since. Pretty much anything she does, I will listen to it. I love all of her work, just everything. But from off the top of my head, The Mystic's Dream, The Dark Night of the Soul, The Mask and Mirror, what's it called? I think it's called To Drive the Cold Winter Away. It's a cover of a classic Christmas song. Standing Stones, The Bonny Swans, Bonny Portmore, The Lady of Shalott, just basically everything that Loreena has done. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. I'll use The Mystic's Dream particularly when I'm doing my spellcraft especially. Some songs are too distracting to have on in the background, but The Mystic's Dream is one that's very calm and soothing, but it also helps you really sharply focus on whatever it is you're working on, at least for me. So Loreena McKennitt is definitely an artist I love. And then after her, fast forward a few years later, about, I want to say 2010, 2011, I discovered Heather Dale. And as many who discover her music, my port of entry was her song Mordred's Lullaby. And it's absolutely fantastic. It's wonderfully dark. Heather is an amazing musician, but also her lyrics are just absolute poetry. They convey so much emotion, so much character. The moment I discovered her Arthurian songs, I said, oh my gods, if she hasn't already, she has to write a musical, because her lyrics are so powerful and can speak to so many characters. Whatever point of view she's writing from, she can just write from characters' perspective so well. And so I was delighted when a few years later she did actually create a musical based on her Arthurian songs called Queens of Avalon. That's absolutely amazing. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Heather's music, she's another artist where pretty much everything she writes I will listen to and adore and love. I'm a Heather fangirl through and through. I just love her music, anything she does. And Queens of Avalon, oh my god, it's so amazing. It combines everything that I love, because I am a pagan, I am a musical theater fan, and I love Heather's music and the Arthurian legends too. So all those things put together into one awesome show of awesome Arthurian epicness. It's amazing. Queens of Avalon, it tells the story of Morgan Le Fay and Guinevere, and it asks the question, what if Morgan and Guinevere met when they were little girls and they became best friends and decided they were going to be sisters forever, and they loved each other as friends, as sisters, and they grew up being taught on the island of Avalon all the wonderful wonderful witchy magic and wisdom that was dying out as, again, the more patriarchal, Christian-driven society was coming into play. And of course, anyone who knows the Arthurian legends knows that as Arthur falls in love with Guinevere and marries her, and then has his conflicts with Morgan, anyone who knows the traditional telling of the Arthurian legends will know that if Morgan and Guinevere were friends, that's going to have a lot of conflict come up later as they sort of drift apart but try to hold on to their sisterhood and friendship and all that. It's absolutely fantastic. Heather is amazing on the cast recording and in the DVD film of the play. She plays Morgan Le Fay, of course, and she is joined by the wonderful, lovely S.J. Tucker, who plays Guinevere, and Suge, as she's known, does a fantastic job. It's an amazing show. One of these days I plan to sit down and do a review of the play in and of itself. But you can find the cast recording on iTunes or Heather's website, heatherdale.com, and you can also find the DVD of the play, because the cast recording in the play was made through a crowdfunding campaign, and I am happy and proud to say that I participated in it. Through the money that was raised through that crowdfunding, they were able to make a cast recording as well as to film a production of the stage show that can be bought either as a physical DVD or as a digital download on Heather's website, heatherdale.com. If you love the Arthurian legends, definitely check it out. But Heather Dale's music is definitely one that I listen to pretty much on a weekly basis. I love all of her music. I especially love her latest album that's come out that's called Sphere. And it isn't based on the Arthurian legends, but there are a lot of songs on it that are inspired by fairy tales, because that's Heather's thing. When she's not writing Arthurian songs, she loves fairy tales in general, and so writes a lot of her music is based on fairy tales and gods and goddesses and things like that. I'm not sure what Heather's spirituality is, but there are a lot of both pagan and Christian themes in her songs, so I assume it's eclectic. But again, I don't know, I'm just guessing based off her music. And her friend and fellow songwriter S.J. Tucker is another musician I love. Pretty much, to make a long story short, any music that she does, I listen to it on a constant. Witchka is one of my favorites. Go Away Godboy, which is a wonderfully tongue-in-cheek song that basically says, hey, if you're a fundamentalist Christian who won't stand for any other religion, and if you're constantly just trying to proselytize to people and just are intolerant in the name of your religion, go away, Godboy. And as SJ explains, it's not a song that bashes Christianity or Christians in general. She wrote the song after a friend of hers was pretty much stalked by a fundamentalist Christian online who thought he was Jesus, and she describes the song as not a church-bashing song, but rather a psycho online stalkers who think they're Jesus-bashing song. It's fantastic. Pretty much all of SJ's music I love. I would love to see her in concert someday. Same thing with Loreena. I've had the good fortune of seeing Heather several times, and she is as wonderful live, if not more so, as she is on her albums. Another group I love, and who was one of the earliest groups I discovered when I was getting my feet wet into discovering pagan music and paganism in general is Blackmore's Night. I love, 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 love Blackmore's Night. Pretty much, again, anything and everything they do, I adore. One of the first songs I discovered by them was Ghost of a Rose. It remains one of my favorites to this day, and it inspired me so much. The imagery in the lyrics, in particular the title, Ghost of a Rose, was so evocative. It made me wonder, what would a ghost of a rose look like? And that inspired me to see that image in my mind and weave it into the book that I'm writing. It manifests in the book as a painting. I just love that song. Ghost of a Rose is amazing. I think it's going to rain today. Circle, Under a Violet Moon, anything by Blackmore's Night. Unless I say otherwise, pretty much assume that every artist I mention, I love all their stuff. Dav the Bard is also another pagan artist I love. Pretty much all of his work. His songs, Green and Grey, The Cauldron Born, Noon of the Solstice. Pretty much everything and anything he does. Another artist I love, and who, thanks to one of the video responses on the Pagan Perspective channel, I found out identifies as pagan, is Florence and the Machine. I adore her music. I don't know all of her songs, but the ones I have listened to, I've loved every single one of them. Remain Nameless, and actually that one, oh my god, I have a story about that one. So it was late one night and I was going down the rabbit hole of YouTube, as you do, and I was working on my novel and looking for some music to have on in the background. And I was already a fan of Florence's work, the songs that I'd heard of her. And so I saw the song and went, oh, that's an interesting title. I'll listen to this and see what it says. And the song was called Remain Nameless. For context, the book series that I'm writing, it follows 4 girls who were created by the arts of their alchemist father. He brought them to life through his arts. He created them through his alchemy, and he raised them on an airship which is disguised as a cloud and therefore is hidden from the rest of the world and can go around wherever it is it needs to go without it being seen by us. And the premise of the series is, once the girls turn 17, their father, after raising them on the ship and teaching them all his wisdom, he sends them down to Earth to help people. And so I'm working on that. I was working on the book, and I was like, oh, here's this song by this artist I like. I don't know what it is, but I'll listen to it. The very first line in that song is, I was born in a big gray cloud, screaming out a love song. And I was just like, holy shit. Like, and as the song kept going, the lyrics fit the story I was writing. And I was like, how the hell, like, these lyrics could have been written for my book. It's almost like wherever the story that my friend and I are writing together, wherever that came from out of the ether, Florence also tapped into it and somehow channeled the energy of the series, because oh my god, it's the song. Like, if the series ever gets made into movies or a TV series or Netflix series, whatever, that song, it could be the theme song. That's how uncannily close to it the lyrics are. It was so trippy. I was like sitting there with my jaw on the floor and just, I had gone to keep writing the book, and my hands were just above the keyboard, just like not moving. I was in shock. It was the trippiest thing ever. It was awesome. And so to hear a couple weeks later that, yes, Florence herself does identify as pagan, I was like, I knew it. I knew it. Not just from that song, but from the others I've heard. Her lyrics seem very witchy and pagan-y, and it's awesome. So that's my story about Florence and the Machine. I love all the songs of hers that I've heard so far. I'm blanking on the other titles, but I'll put them in the description below. And actually, I will put the names of songs and links to them in the description below, because I'm not going to include any here in the video because I don't want to get struck by YouTube, because they're not very good when it comes to even sharing or reviewing songs. If you're not careful, you can have a video be struck for copyright infringement. So, yeah. So those are all the specifically pagan or pagan-inspired artists who I adore. And I don't know, they themselves might not identify as pagan, but definitely a lot of their songs are clearly inspired by paganism, pagan themes, folk tales, fairy tales, etc. And so now I'm going to move on to talking about music or songs or artists that I love who may not necessarily be pagan inspired specifically, but looking at it from a pagan perspective, you can definitely see how there could be a pagan perspective to them. First and foremost, Eartha Kitt, the late, great Eartha Kitt. In fact, cheers to you, great lady. Eartha was one of the very first artists I discovered, even before Loreena McKennitt. And I was about 12 or 13 when I discovered her. I found her because of her work in The Emperor's New Groove. She played Yzma, and Yzma jumped out at me as a character who was way more interesting than the protagonist of the film. And so even back then I was picking up on the witchy vibes of characters and songs. I just didn't realize it because, like I mentioned before, I didn't realize that modern paganism was a thing until my junior or senior year of high school. But Yzma stood out to me, and so I researched the actress who played her, Eartha Kitt, and from there I discovered her music. And her music embodies the aspect of the goddess who is just so wise, the wisdom of the crone, and yet a lot of her music is very sensual and erotic. So it's the wisdom of coming into your own and knowing that sexuality and sensuality isn't evil or sinful or anything like that, and embracing that inner power that you have. And discovering that at the age that I did, at 12, 13, was very powerful for me, because it really helped strengthen me in discovering myself. All these new feelings I was feeling through going through puberty, through being a teenager, they weren't evil or sinful or whatever. Not that my family or anyone around me said so or anything like that, but just the collective culture, especially here in the States, teaches young girls, be a good girl and all those things like that. So yeah, a lot of that puritanical nonsense that is still here in the collective culture of America that frankly needs to go the hell away. Eartha, a lot of her music really helped me. Again, I'm blanking on titles, but I would buy every CD of hers that I could get. Yes, this was back when CDs were a thing. So pretty much any song of hers I will love. But one song that is specifically very pagan-y and witchy is called I'd Rather Be Burned as a Witch. and it talks about how, hey, I'm here, I am a wild, free, sexy girl, I'm proud of it, and I would rather be ridiculed for it and burned as a witch than to not have lived at all and embraced who I am at all. Yes, the late great Eartha Kitt, one of my very early inspirations, even before I realized I was pagan, but in retrospect, one of my very first witchy inspirations. And so again, cheers. I grew up on Disney. A lot of Disney songs can be seen as witchy or speaking to the divine in a universal way. Circle of Life obviously comes to mind. God Help the Outcasts, Out There, When You Wish Upon a Star. And again, a lot of these songs have universal themes, but as I mentioned before, they could also be viewed through a pagan perspective. I mean, hello, Circle of Life talks about seeing the divine in nature and the cycles of nature and the seasons in life itself. God Help the Outcasts talks about asking the divine to work through you to help those in need and to not seek the divine in selfish or power-hungry ways. Out There talks about just being bold and longing for wanting to venture out into the world and have it accept you as you are. Colors of the Wind, of course. You can't forget that song. That is pagan through and through. I mean, it's a song written from the perspective of Pocahontas's spirituality, which of course would be classified technically as pagan, because paganism is basically anything that's not Christianity, Judaism, or Islam. Pretty much all the songs from the Pocahontas soundtrack. Kudos to Disney for that. And along with Disney, of course, there's Broadway. I don't know why I just sang that. I am getting to almost done with my Guinness. That could be why. And apologies if I start singing again, because I do not have the best voice. But with that, let's talk about Broadway. I love musical theater. Particularly, my favorite types of musicals are the ones that are a bit darker. Sweeney Todd, Phantom of the Opera, those sorts of shows. Well, as you can tell, of course, because behind me are all my Phantom pictures. Well, most of them. I have a few more to still hang up. Not just the darker musicals, but the more modern musicals. I've never really been a big fan of, like, say, Rodgers and Hammerstein, the musicals that were from the 50s or 40s. That they seem too sugary sweet and schmaltzy, especially like The Sound of Music. I hate The Sound of Music. I know that might get my musical theater fan card taken away, but I don't care. It's a schmaltzy, just sugary sweet musical, and yet in it the Nazis are coming, so what the hell is up with that? Yeah. So, yeah, that's a brief glimpse into my musical theater taste. Give me musicals with stories that have gothic drama, or even just a story that you can really sink your teeth into, not sugary, schmaltzy, Sound of Music crap. But anyway, some musical songs, like Music of the Night, Phantom of the Opera, I work with them in what's called pop magic. For those who don't know, many pagans will weave figures from pop culture or stories, or basically any figure that isn't a classical deity in the sense of they're from an ancient established pantheon. They'll weave that into their practice and work with that figure or character if their energy or archetype speaks to them. And for me, I worked with him a lot years ago. Haven't so much recently, but he's starting to come back into my life, is Eric, also known as the Phantom of the Opera. And his energy is, I don't want to say dark, because that's gives the wrong impression of it's, somehow evil or malevolent, even though in his story he does malevolent things. But I work with him when I really need to be fearless and be like, hey, I need to stand up for myself, regardless of if I get pushback for it. And that kind of energy that's like, hey, I'm gonna stand up for myself. I don't care what you say, or even if you view me standing up for myself as a negative thing. For instance, not to go too deeply into it, but the politics that have been going on lately here in the States, especially with the so-called squad, the 4 congresswomen here in the States who are standing up for everything that America stands for. The idea that you can love your country and that loving it means being able to criticize it and try to work to make it better, that people of all colors and religions should be able to come here and live here peacefully and work out better lives for themselves. Even when standing up for that, it's been getting a lot of pushback from Republicans and conservatives who subscribe to the more McCarthy perspective of viewing America. So that notion of standing up for yourself, even when people see it as a negative thing, even when their perspective is wrong, that's when I call on Eric. It's like, hey, we're getting a lot of shit right now, or I'm getting a lot of backlash right now, even though I don't deserve it, and even though my perspective is right. So I really need your fearless energy to come in and help me out. I'll work with the title song from Phantom of the Opera or Music of the Night, things like that. And then another song that I've been working with a lot lately, because this is a figure who I work with from my personal pop magic, is the song Labyrinth from the musical The Grinning Man. The Grinning Man is a new musical adaptation of The Man Who Laughs by Victor Hugo, and I did a whole video series reviewing the cast album. While I think, from what I can tell from the cast album, because I didn't have the chance to see the show since it was in London and I'm here in California and the show is closed now, so I was just judging based off the cast album. But while overall, based on what I could tell of the story from it, I thought the story itself was sort of hit and miss. Labyrinth is an absolutely amazing song. It captures the spirit of Gwynplaine, who is one of the figures from The Man Who Laughs I work with in my practice. And I work with him. He is sort of the flip side of Eric. Gwynplaine he comes from a theatrical background, so I work with him when I'm working on theater, and his energy is very calm and gentle. Gwynplaine, as a character, wears his heart on his sleeve. He has been dealt a rough hand of cards. He's gone through a rough road, but he still sees the good in people and does his best to stand up for himself, but be kind and gentle about it. And so I work with him a lot when I need a calmer energy, a fierce energy too, because he also embodies the trickster, being a clown. I'll work with him when I need fierceness and determination, but not necessarily as aggressive and go get him as Eric. But Labyrinth is absolutely fantastic. And in the video of it, which I'll link below, the man who performs it, oh my god, his voice is just, it's one of the most gorgeous voices I've ever heard. It's just beautiful. And the music itself is beautiful, especially the parts with the violin, the chorus of the song, the melody that's played during it. It just captures Gwynplaine so much. I'm honestly jealous that the tune didn't come to the composer I'm working with on my adaptation of The Man Who Laughs. But, you know, it went to who it was supposed to go to, and I know that my version is also going to be magnificent in and of itself. Not to toot my own horn or sound arrogant, but you have to have confidence in your work, and I do in mine. And my play adaptation, I've woven in as much of the book into it as I can, and so I feel it's going to be great. And so with that said, those are all my thoughts on pagan music, or music I use during my practice and that I enjoy as a pagan for their themes and energies, and just, yeah, that's my musical taste in general. And so now I'd like to hear from you. What are yours? What are some pagan artists you enjoy? Or if you don't identify as pagan, what's some music that helps you connect with your faith or spirituality? And thank you for watching, and if you haven't already and you would like to, please subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell, and feel free to follow me on my other socials, which are linked below. Thank you for watching, and blessed be, and cheers.